Hey, everybody in social media land, where now my radio is on. I don't know why I do that, but hey, it's Friday night, you guys. It's Friday, December the 6th. We had an awesome week at The Rock. I hope you guys had an awesome week. And I'm guessing that tonight you're kind of feeling better than you did on Monday, right? Kind of got back into the routine of things. The week kind of ended up way better than it started, I would imagine. Y'all, your aches and pains kind of calmed down a little bit, and you got back on track, and you got going this week. So that's fantastic. I hope that's the way it went for you. I hope everybody out there is enjoying good health today. I hope you're feeling good. Hope you're ready for the weekend. I hope you had a great week at work or whatever it is that you do out there. And yeah, so and I think we could always take these opportunities to learn from the experience that we had. I really enjoyed doing that myself. I like to learn from the experiences that I've had. And like, hey, if I ate too much sugar and I felt like crap, my joints hurt and it didn't do well, it'd be like, yeah, okay, well, maybe note to self. Maybe next time, hey, we got another Christmas coming up here soon. And, we could stay away from those Christmas cookies and all that stuff that's full of processed poison. And then we could just be nice and healthy and, we'll be rocking this world. I had a great conversation with one of my guys. It's a new guy that he and his wife are patients in the office, and man, he's on fire. I mean, like, he's really on fire for health and wellness. And he's telling me about this podcast he listens to, and the guy talks about how we are so he didn't use this word, but kind of dumbed down, kind of ramped down in the way that we function, that we just don't have any idea how great we could be. And I was like, yep, yeah, I agree with that. That's what this show is all about. How good could we be if we were as good as we could be, right? So I'm glad that he's doing that, and I'm glad he's working on it. Now, I'm glad you are too, because if you're listening to the show, you're probably working on it too. So thanks. If you got any questions, comments, you want to send them to me tonight, 806-794-0400. I'd be glad to answer any of your questions tonight. You can send me a message on Facebook, YouTube, or X. We're on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio, 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. We're on Walk by Faith Facebook page. We're on 987radio.com. And we're at the Rock Health and Wellness Center's Facebook, at Health from the Rock on YouTube, and Jason Clemmons DC on X. So tonight's going to be a cool show. It's going to be a little bit complicated, but you got the whole weekend to watch it over and over if you want to. And what we're going to do is I got a request to do a show on dizziness. And so I'm gonna try to do that. When you're doing a show like this, and you're doing a radio show and you're doing a social media show at the same time, and then you start getting into brain parts and neural pathways and all that sort of thing, it just gets very complicated very fast. And so what I'm going to try to do tonight is not get complicated. I want to try to there's no way to not get there's no way to discuss this without being a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try to do it. And in the process of all this, man, I found a great website for you guys. And you might want to write this down. I don't know this person. I don't know. It says written by Brent Pritt, Pritt. I've never looked him up. I don't know who it is. I don't know anything about him. I want to give him all the credit for this website that I found, but it's scienceoffalling.com. And then it's in articles, and the article is which parts of the brain are responsible for balance and equilibrium. And he just does a great job. I've got 3 books over here and all kinds of notes that I was getting prepared for. And we're going to go through all this, but this website is just fantastic. I mean, it goes through the entire thing about falling and the vestibular system and all the canals and the brain stem and just the whole thing. So we're just going to go through this website tonight, and I want to give him all the credit for it. Brent Pritt. Y'all can look him up. You can Science of Falling, just science. SCIENCE OFFALLING. Scienceoffalling.com. You can go there, and he's got some. I think he's got a little program that he sells or talks about with falling and balance and all that sort of thing. So we're just going to get into it. We're going to go through it. It may take us the entire show to get it done, and but that's what we're going to do tonight. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the definition, first of all, of equilibrium, because that's really what we're dealing with. Is we're dealing with the loss of equilibrium when we're talking about being dizzy or we're losing our balance, right? So. And this is going to be one of those shows that kind of steps on the next one and steps to the next thought. So, because they're going to kind of stack on each other like they always do. But equilibrium, a condition in which all activity influences are canceled by others, resulting in a stable, balanced, or unchanging system. A condition which all activity influences are canceled by others, resulting in a stable, balanced, or unchanging system. Mental or emotional balance is the second definition. And then the last one is the state of the body or physical systems at rest or in unaccelerated motion in which the resultance of the forces acting on it is zero and the sum of all torque about any axis is zero. And you're like, Jason, why'd you read that? Like, that's kind of complicated, right? Well, we've said on this show from the very beginning, healthy people inhibit. And that's what we try to remember. Healthy people inhibit. And if you that's one of those like major things to understand. Excuse me. Healthy people inhibit. You inhibit cancer. You inhibit flu. Remember what we talked about? One of the girls came in on Monday, and she was all she had a fever and she wasn't feeling good and coughing and all that sort of thing. And I said I wasn't worried about that because I don't really believe in the germ theory that way. Yeah, because I've got an immune system that's functioning properly because I'm inhibiting the flu. That's what my body's doing. So in equilibrium, in balance, we've got a lot of things working at the same time that are firing muscles and that are inhibiting muscles. We've got inputs coming in from our sensory system, from our vestibular system in our ear, from the proprioceptive system in our neck and in our body, all the way to the bottom of our feet, and from our visual system in our eyes. And all of this information is coming into the brain, and it's stimulating different parts of the brain. And some of those parts are excitatory, meaning they're going to make something happen. And some of those parts are inhibitory, which means they're going to stop things from happening. And when you read the definition of equilibrium, a condition in which all acting influences are canceled by others. That's basically what we want. I want to be able to sit here and do this show, and I just want to be able to sit still, look straight ahead, and not fall off this chair or not feel like I'm going to fall off this chair. Because I'm getting information that is causing muscles to contract, excitatory information. I'm getting information that is stimulating excitatory neurons, and I'm getting information that is stimulating inhibitory neurons, and those two things together are allowing me to just be still. Okay? So just as an example, you could just hold your hand out in front of you, and you could flex your wrist. So your palm, if you're just holding your hand, your palm comes towards you. You're just flexing your hand. And at the same time, you can go back to neutral, and then you can extend your hand. So you've got flexion and extension. But if I want to hold my hand right straight in the middle, and I don't want to have any flexion or extension, then I've got to be able to have equilibrium between my flexors and my extensors. I got to have inhibitory neurons and excitatory neurons firing in a sum total of 0 in order to get to equilibrium. And if you've ever been dizzy, then you know that you're not at equilibrium. You feel like you're falling. And when I'm working on patients, and I've worked on a bunch of them here in the last 2 weeks, that people are dizzy. I even got a text from an old massage therapist that worked for me, and she's talking about, I've had all these things going on in my ear, and it's really making me dizzy. And so I don't really know what's happening. When multiple people start having dizziness, it makes me want to kind of think something else is going on. But they're sitting in, like, sometimes I'll lay them down on the table, and when I lay them down, they'll reach up and grab me, because what they feel like inside their own bodies is that they're moving. They're moving, or the room is moving around them. It's not a dizziness. It's not like fainting. It's more like the things are moving. Well, what we've got is either an overexcitation. We've got too much stimulus for those excitatory pathways, or we have a decrease in the inhibitory pathways, which would make us feel like things are moving. Okay, so there's inputs into the brain stem, and then there's inputs into the cerebellum, which is the balance, coordination, and posture, and then there's inputs that are going up into the cortical regions of the brain in the different areas, and one of them in the parietal lobe that I want to talk about tonight. So what we've done, just so you kind of know it, it's like, why am I dizzy right now? Well, I'm either stimulating excitatory neurons, or I'm not stimulating inhibitory neurons, and I've lost my equilibrium. My sum total is, if I have 5 units going to my flexors and I have 5 units going to my extensors, then the sum total balances out. As 5 positives and 5 negatives goes back to 0, and then all of a sudden I'm at equilibrium. I'm at a balance. Okay, and so that's what we've lost. So the question becomes, why have we lost it? What is the mechanism that's taking place that's causing us to lose it? And there's some parts of the brain that I want to start with, and this is just going through the essential points. Discover the science of balance. Your brain relies on a complex network, including the vestibular system, the cerebellum, and the brainstem, to keep you stable and upright without conscious effort. Right? Upright, extensor muscles firing. That means I'm standing up straight. Those extensor muscles firing are partly being driven by the vestibular system in my ear, which is sending information into my brainstem, which is sending information into the spinal tracts that are going into the muscles to make me stand up straight. The vestibular system at work, located in the inner ear, is this intergyroscope, senses head movement, and, with help of reflexes, ensures you maintain balance in dynamic situations. And then trainable balance through neuroplasticity. Balance training strengthens neural connections, enhancing stability and coordination. By practicing exercises like one-leg stands or balance board, you can actively reduce your risk of fall and improve your brain health. And so this vestibular system has just basically 2 different parts. You've got these 3 semicircular canals that are in your ear. And then you've got this utricle and the saccule. And those are two different little parts of the ear that are contributing to, that's not that, but that are contributing in this whole mechanism right here of head movement. And the head movement in the semicircular canals is just whenever you're in rotation. That's the way that see, I'm already, I can already feel the complication of this, right? But I'm just going to do it anyway. You go back and watch it. But the semicircular canals are dealing with rotation, and the utricle and the saccule are dealing with linear type of movements when you're actually going forward or backward, or if you're going up or down. And you've got this little mechanism inside um, that is inside. It's called the macula, and it's inside those two parts right there. And one of them is in a horizontal position, and one of them is in a vertical position. And then so now those will tell you what's going on when you're going up and down in gravity, and they'll tell you what's going on when you're laying down. So one of them is always the utricle is always firing when we're in gravity, because the forces of gravity are pulling down on that little mechanism that's in the ear, and that's causing the firing system into the brain stem and into the body to let us sit up straight. So we've got extensor muscles. We just don't want to fall into flexion. We want to be able to fire those extensor muscles, and that system needs to be working properly. And what I really want to try to do what I want to try to do with this tonight is give you some ideas of where your problem might be if you're dizzy. If you're having vertigo, what is it that's going on with vertigo that's causing your problem? And then present some ideas that you might be able to solve your problem with. That's really kind of the goal of what we're trying to do. And so the first and the easiest part of it is these semicircular canals. Let me see if we got a better picture. This is a little bit better picture for you guys on the radio. It's just the vestibular system. If you want to look it up sometime, you can look it up and look at these semicircular canals, and then inside is the utricle and the saccule. So this is the part where the most common type of problem that people deal with is called benign proximal positional vertigo. And this is our BPPV. That's one of them. Benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. What benign means it's not malignant. It's not going to cause any more damage or disruption than it already is. Proximal means it just comes from nowhere. Positional means it has to do with where your head is and head movement, and then the vertigo is the vertigo. And this is the spinning of the room, or you feel like you're about to pass out. There's two different kinds right there, right? You feel like you're going to pass out. That's a different kind. The spinning of the room is what we're talking about with this. And basically, what happens in this? Well, I don't know if it actually happens, but this is what you'll get told. You'll get told that you have a little crystal that's in your ear, and that's a calcium carbonate crystal, and it's embedded into the gelatinous layer of the macule, which is inside those two pieces, and it will break loose. And when it breaks loose, the utricle and the saccule is sitting right below your semicircular canals. And the utricle is the one that's right below the semicircular canals. So if one of those pieces was to break loose, then it would get in that canal and it would start to create your dizziness. It would be flowing inside. And I'm gonna write this out. so that you can kind of see it right here. But I think we just went over this a few weeks ago. But let's just say that you got this little canal right here, and inside the canal you've got these, and those are all nerve endings inside there. And those nerve endings, depending on which way they move, are either going to fire or not fire. So let's just say that it's going to take movement in this direction of those little hair follicles, which are nerve endings. It's not hair, not follicles, little hair-like projections. Those are nerve endings. When the fluid that's inside that canal moves, so if you guys ever, I grew up on a horse ranch, so I've had lots of water buckets in my lifetime that I've had to deal with, and sometimes you can be carrying a water bucket, and if you're carrying it, just walking back and forth with that water bucket, it'll slosh around and you'll spill water all over yourself, and so that's one thing that happens is you'll be sloshing that water, and when you're carrying that water bucket. But you can also turn the handle of that water bucket back and forth, and when you do that, that water bucket turns around that water, and then when you let go and be still, the water still kind of moves inside the bucket. So you can just imagine that. Do the same thing when you're you got a glass of tea or something, right? You're just going to go in a circle with it, and when you go in a circle with it, all that fluid inside the tea goes in a circle. Well, the same thing happens when we turn our head. If we turn our head in either direction, well, then we'll start to move we'll move the canal around the fluid, or we'll move the fluid inside the canal one way or the other. And what we'll get information that's going to fire. Those little hair-like follicles are going to fire. If you bend them one direction, they fire, and if you bend them the other direction, they don't. So when you bend them in that direction, when that fluid moves, now it's going to send the signal that's going to go into the brain. It's going to fire that, and it's going to tell you you're moving. Well, the problem with it is that if one of those little crystals, breaks free from the mechanism, and I just talked about this the other day. It's like how I imagine that is a trampoline with a bunch of river rocks poured on top of it, and then somebody just poured big old buckets of glue, like 5-gallon buckets of glue, all on top of that trampoline, and they let all those river rocks just get all stuck together on top of that trampoline. And so now if you just go in the middle and you just push down on the river rocks a little bit, then the trampoline goes up and down, and that up and down motion, gravity, up and down motion hits the nerve endings that are underneath that little mechanism, and then they fire into the brain. That's how you know up and down. If you've ever been in an elevator, you know exactly what that means. As soon as you get to the bottom of the elevator, you get that little feeling. It's like, whoa, that little movement right there. Kind of makes you unequal for a second. You lose your equilibrium just there for a second at the bottom of that elevator. And that's what's happening. Well, every once in a while, apparently, what people say, I'm not 100% sure, but what people say is that one of those little river rocks will break loose, which is what one of those little calcium carbonate crystals will break loose, and it will get stuck inside. It'll get stuck inside that canal. And so now, if you move and you lay down or you set up, you're not really getting all the fluid inside that canal to move, but you're getting that rock, that little crystal stuck. It might be up here somewhere, and then all of a sudden it just starts going, or maybe it's over here, and it just starts falling. And it's falling really slowly, but it's firing all of those nerve endings, and all of those nerve endings are firing into your brainstem and into your parietal lobe, which is in your cortex, and that is giving you this dizziness that's going on. That's one thing, and that's like the most simple definition of it. They're saying, oh, you got crystals in your ear, and that's the reason that you've lost your balance. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe that is the reason. But I'm not 100% convinced that that's the reason. And I'm not 100% convinced that it's the reason as much as it gets credit for being the reason. I actually think it's a disruption in the entire mechanism that's going on in the brains with all of it somewhere. Like the firing patterns are wrong, or we've gotten offline with the firing patterns, and that's what's causing us to have this sense of vertigo. And we got to take a break. But when we get back from the break, I want to get into all those other things that I think have to do with why we will lose equilibrium or feel like we've got vertigo or dizziness. So you guys stick around with me. I know it's a difficult one, but we'll be back right after these messages. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to just blame any vertigo on crystals and then say that, okay, well, and they'll do, you guys that have dealt with it before, they'll do a Hall Pike maneuver where they're going to lay you down on your back and tilt your head backwards and tilt it sideways, and then they're going to set you up, and what they're going to try to do is see if they can create this problem with that crystal in your ear. And if they can create the problem, then they're like, okay, the crystal broke in your ear, and that's what's going on, and that's what's making you dizzy. And so then the next thing they do is they do the Epley maneuver. And the Epley maneuver is a way of turning the head in a position so that now you can make the crystal fall all the way down, and then turn the head the other direction, and then make the crystal fall out. And what you're basically trying to do is get that crystal to fall out of that semicircular canal. It's usually the posterior canal, and then once you get it out of there, then your dizziness goes away. There's just so much repetition in that, and this benign paroxysmal part of it, where it comes out of nowhere, can be very disruptive to your life. And I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not exactly convinced that it's just the crystal. Could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong on that, but I just don't think it's just the crystal that's causing the problem. I think it has to do more with the whole mechanism of all this together, because we're talking about these semicircular canals coming into this vestibular nerve that is eventually going to go into. Let me see if he's got some pictures. He's got some. Yeah, he's got all the things in there, but brainstem pictures. We'll talk about where that is. I'll see if I can show one right quick while we're on the break. See, this is where this is all going. It's a pretty good picture right there. This is those nuclei that are coming in, and that's where the vestibular system is firing into, and then that's the cerebellum, and that's going all up into the cortex. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We talked before the break. What we're talking about tonight is dizziness or vertigo, and we talked before the break about the crystals in the ear, the Hall Pike maneuver, and the Epley maneuver. Okay, fine. Now what I want to talk about is the integration of all of the systems that are firing into the brain that are maybe contributing to this vertigo. And it really does kind of get complicated. But heck, it's Friday night. We don't have anything else to do. We might as well get a little complicated. All right. So let's start up at the top. And if you're just joining us, this is scienceoffalling.com. This is written, it says here, by Brent Pritt. I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about this website. I was just trying to do a little research before we started the show, and I found this, and it's fantastic. So I want to give Brent all the credit, and I want you to go to his website, and I want to make sure that you guys know scienceoffalling.com. That's what I got it. That's what I found it on, and it's for balance and equilibrium. So we're going to the different systems. The vestibular system, the core of balance. When it comes to balance, the vestibular system in your inner ear is the star player. The system acts like the body's internal gyroscope, constantly sensing changes in head position and motion and providing critical information for your brain to keep you upright. So how does it work? There you go. You got the 3 semicircular canals. You got the 2 otolith organs, the utricle and the saccule, that sense linear movement, such as moving forward and backward, and with the effect of gravity. And so these sensory organs contain fluid and tiny hair cells. When you move your head, the fluid inside the semicircular canal shifts. That's what I just went over in the first one, right? So there are reflexes that keep us stable. And these reflexes have to be developed. And so it's part of, like, if you ever try to watch a child learn how to walk, it's hard. It takes some months for that child to learn how to walk. Because part of what that child is having to do is having to build the neuroplasticity of the reflex in with the head and the extensors and balancing that whole system. The flexors and the extensors. You see a little kid, sometimes they'll stand up and then all of a sudden they'll just kind of wobble and then they'll just fall back down on their butt, right? Well, what they haven't done is they haven't integrated that movement of their head into their reflex to enable to stabilize their body, to get their flexors and their extensors to work in a way that stabilizes things. Same thing happens if we try to learn as adults. We try to learn something new. One of the examples I read was like learning how to be a pilot. If all of a sudden you're an adult and you're trying to learn how to be a pilot, it's complicated because you're moving in some different directions or whatever. And you take some practice. And then another example would be if you were an athlete and you wanted to really fine-tune your craft. Well, it takes exceptional high levels of balance in order to be a great athlete. Whether you're a basketball player, a football player, one of the best ones we've ever had is Taj Brooks here at Tech. He has some of the most amazing balance. His vestibular system, all of those reflexes that are firing in his brain are unbelievable. They're unbelievable that what he is able to do. He's the all-time leading rusher in the history of Texas Tech football. He rushed for 1,500 something yards this year, and he's just an amazing guy. But the fine-tuning it, and what I want to present is that sometimes what happens with us is we start to lose some of that system. We start to lose this integration of all of the systems that are going into this brainstem area. And the brainstem area is receiving information from 3 different areas, 3 different sensory inputs when it comes to balance. And we've gone over the vestibular system in the ear. And if that's complicated to you, just Just think you have this little mechanism in your ear that's connected to a nerve, and that nerve is going to your brainstem, and there's some areas in your brainstem that are responsible for setting you up and getting you to have balance. And it goes to your cerebellum, which is balance. Okay? So we got the vestibular system, but what also is engaged in this whole thing in a very high level is your visual system. And one of the examples is the image on the retina. When I turn my head, and when I turn my head, and when my eyes are open and I turn my head, the images that are being um, detected by my eyeball, the images that are being put onto my retina are pretty much moving at the same speed as the images, as the fluid that's moving in my ear. So when I turn my head in one direction or the other, that's pretty simple. And I can visually keep that in check when I'm turning my head. Those two things are working together in harmony. But when my head is going sideways, or when my head is going forward or backward, that's a little bit more complicated, because especially like if you've been in a car. The example is if you've been in a car and you're driving down the highway and you look out the window, the images that are closest to the car are moving way faster than the images that are way out in the field. And we all know that because we can sit there and look at a mountain forever, or we can sit out there, there's be cattle or horses out in the pasture, and we could just drive by them, and we could look at that cattle or those cattle or that horse for a long period of time, but the road, that's the part of the road or the bar ditch or whatever that's right next to us, is moving. Now it's going as fast as our car is. And now we've got to coordinate that in our brain. We've got to be able to say, okay, my head is moving and the images are moving, and the images are moving at different speeds. And so there's some important coordination that's going on in the brainstem and in the brain and in the cerebellum that can start to get weaker if maybe we're losing a little bit of visual system. So maybe our eyes are not where you guys know what I've always talked about with these glasses that I'm wearing. And I'm wearing these, this is a trifocal, what do they call them? No line trifocals or whatever, progressive lenses. So I've got 3 different inputs coming into my brain depending on how my head is tilted. So now I've got this, which leads me into the third part of what's going on with balance, is proprioception. And proprioception is the receptors, especially the joint receptors, the cervical spine joint receptors, that are firing into those same areas of my brainstem that help integrate all that together. And think about that for just a second. If I've got my glasses on and I've got 3 different strengths of lens in glasses, and I'm getting visual input into my brain, but at the same time as I'm doing that, I'm also tilting my head back, and my neck proprioceptors are firing into those same exact nuclei. They're going in there too. And it's like, now I got to try to coordinate that together. And there's some times that I feel like I'm about to pass out. And that's not the vertigo part, but that's the part where you feel like you're about to pass out, is because, well, I've got disintegration of the input system right there. And there's a difference as far as the way that my brain is going to respond. If I just tilt my head in one direction, my eyes counter rotate back the other direction, and I can still see And you guys could do the same thing if wherever you're at. Be careful if you're driving, but you can sit there and just tilt your head sideways, and you can still see the screen in front of you, and you don't fall out of your chair. Now, if you tilt your head sideways and you do fall out of your chair, you definitely have disintegration of that sensory information that's coming into your brain. But it's different than if I just lean my whole body over. Leaning my whole body over is a different mechanism in my brain than just tilting my head over in that direction. And again, that's integration, sensory integration of three different systems into the brain at the same time. You're getting movement of the liquid in your ear. You're getting your vestibular system giving you input. You're giving proprioceptive joint receptors and fascia receptors and muscle receptors, but mainly joint receptors that are going in from your neck. My neck is firing into my brain. My eyes are firing into my brain. And I'm getting all of that information coordinated together all at once. And it's going to go up into my parietal lobe. It's going to go into the parietal lobe of my brain. And I'm going to skip a little bit this, but where I have this internal GPS in my parietal lobe, I have a map. On this website, it says, now imagine standing with your eyes closed. Even though you can't see your surroundings, you still know where your arms and legs are in space, thanks to a sense called proprioception, which is part of the somatosensory system of balance, meaning the muscle sensory part. The internal GPS relies on sensory receptors in your muscles, joints, and skin that send continuous feedback to your brain about body position. So you're getting constant information into your brain that's telling you where your body is in space, and it's integrating in the parietal cortex. All this proprioceptive information is processed by the parietal cortex, which helps the brain form an accurate map of where your body is in relation to its surroundings. The sensory feedback is crucial for balance because it allows your brain to detect subtle changes in body position even without visual cues such as at night or in low lighting conditions. When proprioception is impaired, your ability to maintain balance can suffer. Conditions that will affect proprioceptions like neuropathy from diabetes or joint injuries often result in difficulty controlling movements and a higher risk of falls. Okay, my point to that is there's a system that is coming from your body into your brain, into your parietal lobe, that's giving you a map of where your body is in relation to everything that's around it. Well, let's just say that what could be happening is that system is not working efficiently. What could be happening is that system is now offline. It's just a little bit inefficient. And that's what I say, like a radio, like tuning into an old radio. Sometimes you got that little dial just doesn't tune in right. It's a little staticky. And sometimes you turn on the radio and it's that you didn't even move the dial, but it just kind of it's one time it's perfectly clear and the next time it's just staticky. That's what mine does. I got my clock radio that the alarm went off this morning I got it when I was 15 years old, and I'm 54 years old. So I've had that clock radio dang near my whole life, and it's kept me it's going, but it won't tune in. It's gotten old. It's gotten inefficient, and it won't. Sometimes I'm listening. Really, sometimes I wake up with country music, and sometimes I wake up with sports talk radio, and sometimes I wake up with Spanish music. I can't tell which one's like. I don't know how to fix that dial because you just barely touch it and it changes. That's what happens sometimes in this system where now we've got this disintegration of proprioception into our brain, which is just offset just a little, and it's making us dizzy. It's making us feel like we have vertigo. Or it's not integrated properly with what's going on from the vestibular system. Or it's not integrated properly from what's going on to the visual system. My eyes, maybe I'm starting to lose some sight. Maybe I'm not quite seeing as clearly as I used to see. Maybe my eye dynamic, which is moving up and down and up and down and moving my eyes right and left, all of those movements are coming from the brainstem as well. They're coming from the areas of the cranial nerves that run the eye. I had a girl yesterday. She was laying on the table, and we were talking about up and to the right and over to the left, and the right hemisphere being, if it's overactive, you're going to get anxiety and depression. You're going to get ADD. And she said, well, that sounds like me. And she said, well, what do I do to solve that problem? And what are my 3 things? Number 1, be social, right? She doesn't necessarily like to do that. Number 2, walk. And she said, oh, I do that. And number 3, I said, get your eyes up. So she's laying on the table on her back. And I said, just imagine you have a line right through the middle of your eyeball on the horizontal, and just try to get your eyes above that line. And so I said, just get your eyes up. And she said, no, that hurts. Yeah. Why does it hurt to raise your eyes up? I noticed it when we were in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. We went and watched that Chiefs-Raiders game in Las Vegas for my birthday. I was sitting out at the pool, and I was trying to look at the top of that hotel because they got a big old TV on the side of that hotel. I was trying to look at the top of that hotel without tilting my head up. I was just trying to get my eyes up, and it was straining my eyes too. And it was the sun, it was bright out there, and I could feel the strain in my eyes from getting my eyes up. Well, what do we do these days? We take our phones and we look down. And we practice firing the mechanisms of looking down all the time, but we don't practice the mechanisms of looking up. And that visual system may be losing a little bit of its integration into this whole balance system, and that may be causing some of it. Because really, the solution to this problem is either you're going to just do the Epley maneuver and solve the problem, like you just get the crystal out of the ear and poof, it's fixed, and then everybody's happy, and that's the end of it until it happens again, and then you just got to do that maneuver again and then solve the problem. Okay, if that's the mechanism of if that is the causative mechanism of the problem, then the solution is easy. If you've got some sort of damage to that vestibular system in your ear, like an infection ate away at the bone, or you've got some sort of something like that took place, then you might just have to have surgery and remove that whole system in your ear. Like there may not be another option as far as that goes. But those 2 things to me are givens. It's like, okay, fine. If it's just the crystal, we'll just do the Epleys and move you on down the road. But then it comes back. Then it comes back. Then it comes back. Then it comes back. Then it starts coming back more frequently. Then you're just like daily. And then it's like, well, maybe it's not the crystal. So if you don't have a crystal that's causing it, and you don't have some sort of infection that ate up your vestibular system that's causing it, then the next thing I think is this disintegration from this very complicated system that's using vestibular proprioception and visual information to all integrate together. And that at some point in all that, you've lost you've lost that tuning of it, and it's being registered in your brain as the gyroscope. What are they calling that thing? Um, um, your internal, yeah, whatever we call that, the gyroscope, whatever that thing is, right? But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Is that the internal GPS system may be off balance, and if that internal GPS system is off balance, now it becomes complicated because which part of it is off balance. So what would you do to solve that problem? And in our office, we just go back to trying to do the things that fire those systems and reestablish an efficient neuroplasticity nerve firing pathway in those areas. That's what we would do. We would work on trying to get joint proprioception from the cervical spine to properly fire and get reintegrated back into the brain. We would work on eye movements to try to get the brain to reintegrate itself. We might use laser glasses or vibe plates, or follow the tuning fork, like all the things that would go into eye movement or visual stimulation or visual exercises. We want to try to get the cervical spine moving through the proper ranges of motion. And it's not just the cervical spine that's a proprioception, that's the entire body. Like the pads on the bottom of your foot, like your heel pad, is a contributing factor into this proprioceptive system that gives you balance. The way you feel your toes is a way that gives you information into this system. So we use vibe plates for those sort of things, standing on a vibe plate, trying to shake your feet a little bit to try to get your brain and your feet to reconnect with themselves. To try to see if we can make an improvement in that manner. So that those are some of the things. Those are just some of the things that we would do, and then we would work the vestibular system. It is moving your head, moving your eyes. This with a vestibular ocular reflex. So now I can turn my head and look at the screen. And when I turn my head and look at the screen all at the same time, then I am firing the vestibular system, and I'm also getting the visual system all integrated in there. So, and one more thing I want to say before we move along is I'm not just getting information from one part ever. I mean, it's really hard to isolate yourself in such a way that you're only getting one piece of information. Because when you turn your head in one direction, both ears are turning. So both vestibular systems are getting input. And when you turn your head in one direction, your eyes are picking up on that. And when you turn your head in a direction, you're getting the proprioception from the joint mechanics firing into your brain. So it's really hard to just isolate one area. And you're not isolating one area. You're integrating a lot of information into that system. Now, there's other components, and this guy does it on his website. There's other components right here, and number one of those components is blood supply to the head. And we give everybody a notebook in our office that when they come into the office, we try to get them all a notebook. And the very last article in the notebook is the changes in blood supply to the head based on the cervical curve. So you do have a change in blood supply, and that blood supply to this whole brain stem and the parietal lobe is very important. So that is also a major deal of blood supply. Now, the second thing is what's in the blood. Is too much glucose in the blood? Or do you have enough fatty acids in the blood? Do you have enough oxygen in the blood? Those are things that are important to this whole system too. So it's not, it's, you see what I mean? It's like there's just a lot of things going on. We got to make sure our nutrition's right. We got to make sure our supplementation's right. We got to make sure that our exercise is right. And I know a lot of you guys that deal with this, especially the one that requested the show on dizziness. You're working hard at it. I know you're working hard at it, but that's kind of what the whole thing would be about. And we're out of time. If there's anything I could do to answer more of it, or maybe you watch the show and let me know and say, hey, okay, that was good, but what else you got that maybe I can, if you got any questions, let's just say it that way. If you got any questions about it, then let me know, and we'll just keep going. We'll do it privately or whatever, but maybe we can solve this, because that's what we're working on, is to solve your problem through all of these different integrations. Hey, you guys have a great weekend. That's the end of the show. I'll be back on Monday. You guys have a great weekend. Thanks.